Hello everyone, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank, and today we're going to talk about Gray Jedi. And the reason we're going to talk about Gray Jedi is looking back on everything leading up to The Last Jedi being in theaters, there was always this big discussion going on. Well, not even a big discussion, like this hint every now and then. You saw it from, I think, Collider talked about it, and a couple of Star Wars channels talked about it too, like, is Luke Skywalker going to become a Gray Jedi? And for the longest time, I thought, well, that would be interesting, but I don't know. And then there was discussion about what is a Gray Jedi, what isn't a Gray Jedi. And for the most part, all I kept hearing was, well, if I were a Jedi, I'd be a Gray Jedi. You're just sort of like a Jedi, but just sort of leaning on to the dark side. And it all reminded me of those images you see online about Gray Jedi. Those images of this really cool dude. It looks like he's from Assassin's Creed. He's got two lightsabers, they're different colors, and he's got this really long Gray Jedi code. Like, there is no dark side nor a light side. There is only the Force. I will do what I must to keep the balance. The balance is what keeps me together. There is no good without evil, but evil must not be allowed to flourish. There is passion, yet emotion, serenity, yet peace, chaos, yet order. I am the wielder of the flame, the protector of balance. I am the holder of the torch, lighting the way. I am the keeper of the flame, soldier of balance. I am a guardian of balance. I am a great Jedi. And the whole time, part of you is thinking, all right, now when do you get to the part where you say, you're the terror that flaps in the night, and the weed whacker in the garden of evil? The term Grey Jedi has become sort of fan-idolized, and I kind of want to blame Revan for that, but I think that's something entirely different, so let's shelve the Revan thing. Let's just totally shelve any talk about Revan as we talk about some things that exist around Revan's time. So let's talk about a Grey Jedi. So a Grey Jedi is most commonly known as one of two things. It is a Force user who walks the thin line between light and darkness, yet always stays on the light. There are Jedi who disagree with the Jedi High Council and the strictures of the Jedi Code, and there's a third one, which we'll come back to at the end. So let's talk about the first two. So when it comes down to the first, which is a Force user who walks a thin line between light and dark, I think for the most part, most people would, I guess, assume a Grey Jedi is someone who preferably gets to have their cake and eat it too. And most people will cite, oddly enough, Mace Windu. Like, I remember I was at a comic book shop, and people were like, oh, Mace Windu's a Grey Jedi. I'm like, how is he a Grey Jedi? Like, well, he's got that darkness, the Vapad thing, He's got the dark side. I'm like, well, no. If I'm reading it right, combination of the Wikipedia articles and the Revenge of the Sith novelization, Shatterpoint, hearing other people talk, it seems more like Mace Windu's inner darkness, quote unquote, is he likes to fight. He risks getting too into the fight, which is why he created Vapad to channel his, inner darkness to a weapon of light. I don't really get that. I mean, people say the purple lightsaber, but we know he gets those crystals. Like, he has specific crystals that are purple. When put into a lightsaber and turned on, it's purple. He has nothing to do with that. He was not granted a purple crystal from the Jedi Order. Like, no. They didn't go like, here you go, get a purple one. Originally, the purple lightsaber came from Samuel L. Jackson, who wanted a purple lightsaber. But that's totally irrelevant because, we expand it and explain it. And from what I've seen, the only story is, Mace got some purple crystals, and he uses them. It's kind of it for the most part. We go to later tenets of the Jedi, or later eras of the Jedi Order, in terms of the light and dark side of the Force. And, like, if you look at, I think it was Kyle Katarn who said, like, well, it's light and dark, but the Force is kind of just a tool at some point. Like, Force techniques are a tool, and they're not inherently good or inherently bad, depending on how you use them. And we saw that something similar to that with Plo Koon, who used a variation of Force lightning. And he said, well, I didn't tap into the dark side, I just did it. There was a power, turns out I could do this, and I'm going to keep using it. Like, he went to the Jedi Council, they grilled him for a bit, like, look, I'm going to keep using it because it'll save lives, and that's kind of all there is to it. It's just sort of hard, like, what do we mean by when we say, like, we're walking the razor's edge between light and dark, and we're saying, like, oh, he uses those techniques, but he's always right there. I'm like, okay, I get what you're trying to say, but how? I think it also comes down to how you interpret the light and dark side of the Force. So I guess ideally, if we take the idea that the light side of the Force is all about controlling your emotions, the Force granting you a sort of clarity and focus, and we view the dark side as the idea that you access the dark side by giving in to your emotions. A combination of the two would be you're using your emotions and then controlling them. But we see that before in other works, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Phantom Menace. Like, he's clearly feeling his emotions after Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon Jinn. But then afterwards, he's pretty calm. He's pretty cool about it. Use your rage to give you focus, but then turn the lightsaber off. We're done here. He's dead. We good? We good. It's sort of weird to figure this out in terms of the Force, because the Force is never consistent. Especially in the expanded universe, we look at different Force groups like the Adepts of the White Current, which were mentioned in the Star Wars novel trilogy, The Dark Nest Crisis. And Jason talks about the Adepts of the White Current, like, oh yeah, so to them the Force is like a current, a current that flows through you, and when you let the Force flow through you, you don't impede on it, that's the light side. And when you try to divert the current to stop it from going here or there, that's the dark side. That's you tapping into that dark side power. Instead of letting the Force's will guide you, you're asserting your will over the Force to an extent. And I thought, okay, but how does that still work in line with, let's say, the more easy to understand take on the Force from The Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope? Where it's like the dark side is quicker and more seductive. It's the easy road, and it preys on your desires, not your needs, to some extent. Like, it's sort of like the dark side is like candy, and the light side is vegetables, to some extent. But the issue I'm having is, if Plo Koon is using Force Lightning, or some variation of it, and he's not on the dark side, like, he's not tapped into the dark side, and if Mace Windu's Vapad is created because he sort of realizes he shouldn't lose himself in a fight, which is like a very watered down version of going to the dark side, then does this really apply? And I know I said we wouldn't use Revan, but Revan's use of like the light and dark side comes from him having been on both sides, and I think he might be the only real example. I mean, if we go to the Legends continuity with Luke again, we're seeing an era of Jedi that just kind of, for the most part, do what they want. I mean, he's good at using Force illusions and cutting himself off from the Force. I mean, there's only a small handful of actual dark side Force abilities. So maybe it's not the abilities, maybe it's the mindset. The idea that you can let yourself into the Force. Let yourself use those emotions to give you focus, but at the same time pull them back in. So I guess that could work, but we see Jedi do that most of the time. So maybe that doesn't quite work. So let's look at the second one. The second one is, someone who disagrees with the structure of the Jedi Order or the Jedi Code and the Jedi Council. And we would say, oh, that's Qui-Gon Jinn. It's Qui-Gon Jinn in a nutshell, when he, the Council doesn't want me to, they said he shouldn't be let in, he's too old, and we can't figure this kid out. I thought, okay, well, that would almost work. But the thing is, the more we look at Qui-Gon Jinn, he's more someone guided by the Force to an extent. Like, he doesn't fundamentally disagree with the Council. It's like, okay, the Council wants him to do this, but I think the best route at this time is telling him to go that way. He's going more on his instinct. He's more like Naruto in some extent. The idea that these characters, like, yeah, we follow the rules, and we know we have these rules in place, but in this one instance, something's telling me not to. And that's pretty much like it for the most part. I think when people think of a Gray Jedi, they think of a vigilante, oddly enough. Like, you think of, there's superhero, there's the police, there's criminals, and there's Batman. That's kind of it for the most part. I think that's ideally what we think of when we think of a Gray Jedi, a vigilante. And the issue I have in terms of calling Qui-Gon Jinn a Gray Jedi is that I don't feel that it quite meets what we're seeing. Like, to me, a Gray Jedi is someone who disagrees with the Order and the Code to the extent where they have to leave. Like the character Jolie Bindo, he left the Jedi Order during the time of Exar Kun when his wife fell to the dark side and he couldn't stop her and he wouldn't really give a lot of information away. And when they said, like, you know what? Yeah, she's dead and all. It's not your fault. Yeah, just get promoted. You're a Jedi Knight now. You've learned a very important lesson. And Jody was like, no, I disagree. You guys are terrible. I'm out. A more realistic one would be Dooku. Dooku did not wake up one morning and say, the Jedi are weak and pathetic, and I'm going to strengthen the Republic and whatnot by joining the dark side. No, he constantly disagreed with decisions the High Council was making in regards to the Republic. The Battle of Galadron is a good example. And the admittance of Anakin Skywalker, the idea that this kid's the chosen one, he's going to fix our problems. The Duke's like, I'm out. And he became a Sith, for the most part, when he found out about the death of Qui-Gon Jinn. That helped push him over the edge, at least from what I'm reading and gathering. I'm pretty sure my timelines are probably off in one or two places. The Jedi Master Thome, he, before Legends continuity came in and killed him off in a flashback in Dark Disciple, was very unconventional for a Jedi. Not only was he a spy master who was subterfuge and also had a variety of hand-to-hand skills, having trained with Anzadi assassins, he also formed a romantic relationship with the Jedi Master Trasa, this really cool tree lady. And while they didn't brag about it, it was more likely kept on the hush. It seemed like those two were very well like, hey, look, we care about each other, we're romantically involved to some extent, but we don't get overly attached. We're aware that you could die at any time, I could die at any time. Actually, you're going to outlive me. You're this tree lady thing. And you've been alive longer than, I think, even Master Yoda. And we see other Jedi who make those same sort of commitments. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Siri Taichi. Those two found out that they were close to each other. They had feelings for each other, and they put those feelings aside to be better Jedi. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Duchess Satine. I mean, and I think the best example of an actual Gray Jedi would probably be Ahsoka Tano. After her adventures, like, her being falsely accused of a crime, and the Jedi Order effectively just, throwing her to the wolves. And then when, okay, it turns out you didn't do it, you said you didn't do it, we didn't believe you, we should have stood by you, but we apologize, and we're hoping you stay here, become a Jedi, and whatnot. And she left. I thought, okay, I can see this. The decisions and actions of the Jedi Order have put you in a position where you say, I can't be here anymore. That, to me, sounds way better than just I sometimes disagree with the Jedi Council. I sometimes don't listen to them. And by that logic, Anakin Skywalker's always been a great Jedi. And he wasn't a great Jedi. He wasn't a great Jedi. He became a Sith, but, And for the most part, I think it also comes down to an understanding of the Jedi Code. The Jedi Code is never consistent throughout the galaxy's history. It really isn't. The original version of the Jedi Code was emotion yet peace, ignorance yet knowledge, passion yet serenity, chaos yet harmony, death yet the Force. And then we had a newer one, which is best known from the Republic era of, Kenobi, Mace Windu. There is no emotion, there is peace, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity, there is no chaos, there is harmony, there is no death, there is the Force. These two codes would almost be interchangeable. But I think the problem is when you say there is no, it implies that, you cannot have these things. You have to train yourself to keep away from these emotions, where the original one seems to say, yeah, there's emotion, but you focus. Don't let your emotions take away your sense of peace. Where it seems a Republic era version saying, avoid emotion. Which I think as you grow as a Jedi, you come to understand that's not exactly what they want. Then you have Grandmaster Luke Skywalker's in the original Legends continuity, which goes along the lines of Jedi are the guardians of peace in the galaxy, Jedi use their powers to defend, to protect, Jedi respect all life in any form, Jedi serve others rather than ruling over them for the good of the galaxy, Jedi seek to improve themselves through knowledge and training. That one I think is a bit more fun, but it's not as grand or as self-instruction. I think there's a bit of behavioral control in the first two eras of the Jedi Order, where Luke's is more of, okay, you want to be a Jedi, this is what we believe fundamentally. This is who we are. And it's not instructions to what you need to do, it's who you are. At least that's how I've read it. I mean, I'm sure people have gone over the Jedi Code time and time again. But another issue, well, we'll come back to the second issue. The final one, the final tenet, I think, which I think is actually where the Gray Jedi term is better suited for, is the idea that they're just organizations in the Force that aren't Jedi or Sith, but are inherently good, which may fall in line with the one of like Jedi or Force users who walk the thin line between light and dark side of the Force. The Order of the Jensari, which were a group that thought they were Jedi but were following Sith teachings, and then when they found out about Jedi teachings, they sort of kept the best of both worlds and went from there. They're the Imperial Knights from the era of Legacy Comics, which were a group of Force users who pledged to serve the Emperor and the Force, and if the Emperor was going down the dark side, they'd kill him. That was kind of it. They wore armor. They looked really cool. You see them at fan conventions from time to time. And they did what they wanted. For the most part, they still served that higher purpose. So I think that's more in line with the Gray Jedi and the idea that how in different animes like Naruto, for example, or even Bleach, you have people that have spirit energy or chakra and use it for different means but aren't ninja or soul reapers or hollows or whatnot. That's, I think, what we look for when we look for a Gray Jedi, at least in that sense. And I think that's much better than the other stuff. Like, to be a Gray Jedi would be to be something more than a Jedi or a Sith in terms of light and dark. Ultimately, looking back on all this, I say there's an inherent flaw in the Gray Jedi terminology in that it's not consistent throughout the era except for that last one, I think. Because you can find exceptions to these rules of walk this thin line between light and dark side of the Force, disagree with the Jedi Council. These are all matters of intensity and severity. Like, I don't think if you feel that your issues with the Jedi Council aren't so great that you have to leave, I don't think that counts you as a Gray Jedi. We saw in The Last Jedi, Luke is making an argument against the Jedi, but it often feels like he's just using that as an excuse. Like, he doesn't want to admit, oh, yeah, the reason I'm in exile is because I totally thought of killing my nephew. And I may have said it was an instant, but I was in that room a while. That instant, I walked all the way to his room, turned on my lightsaber, and yeah, I didn't get that. And if you go to Legends continuity era and say you take a Jedi from Luke's Jedi Order and put them in Kenobi's Jedi era, I mean, one of them would see the other as the Gray Jedi. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Like, their councils make different decisions that I don't think the other would have made. I mean, Luke is kind of solo with his Jedi Order. Like, you know what? No, we're not always gonna listen to the Republic on this or the Galactic Alliance. Like, no. We're the Jedi, and that sounds stupid. We're not helping. Or get your life together, government. Get your life together. And I think that's it for the most part. I mean, the Gray Jedi at worst is the fanboy's wet dream. I can do anything. I got Yoda lightsaber skills and Sidious force powers and and lightning and acrobats and flips and whatnot. And I'm like cool and intense like Mace Windu, but I'm also calm and cool like Kenobi, but I'm also as ferocious as Darth Maul and as elegant as Dooku. Yeah, I've got a Christopher Lee voice, is what I'm saying. That's awesome. That's it for the most part, and I think we're sort of oversimplifying. Gray Jedi 91 once did his Star Wars alignment sheet, and if you haven't seen that, I think that's actually really good. And he gave us a good summary of what he thinks a Gray Jedi should be, which is I think it was a lawful neutral character, and the idea that a Gray Jedi should ideally say, like, I'm beholden to the laws and authority figures, but I'm not beholden to them. I think I'll, for the most part, do what I want. Well, to an extent. Sort of the idea that not in Qui-Gon's ways going off of a sort of higher moral code, or like the Force tells me this, like, well, no, yeah, I should do that, but I think the better way is to do it this way. So I'm going to try to bend the rule as much as I can and still get the results with it so that everyone's happy. Gandalf's a good example, and he used the example of Thome, which I think is a good example. Thome is very much a Jedi, but he's not a Gray Jedi. Or maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. I would totally own up to that. So if you think I've got the right idea, or if I've missed something, feel free to leave that down in the comment section. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Otherwise, we'll actually do all of that. do all of it, and I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.